Hi everyone, welcome to my channel. My name is Cassandra and today I'm doing an advanced Yin Yoga practice to help you get deeper into your back bends using a yoga wheel. So a yoga wheel is quite an interesting prop. It's a great way to open up your shoulders, stretch out the front body, open up the hip flexors. Honestly, there's a lot of stuff that you can do with a yoga wheel, but the way that I usually like to use it the most is when I'm trying to get deeper into my back bends. This is an intense practice. We are going to be working our way up to full camel pose, which is a very, very deep back bend. So this is absolutely not suitable for beginners, not suitable for people who have very, very limited mobility. Definitely start with my more beginner Yin Yoga practices and then you can work your way up to this one. So obviously you are going to need a yoga wheel in order to do this pose, and you're also going to need 2 blocks. So definitely have that somewhere close by. So grab your props and let's get started. Our first pose is supported fish. Make sure you're sitting closer to the top of the mat. This will make it easier for us to roll onto the wheel afterwards in our next poses. So you can gently let yourself rest on the wheel. You want it to be more towards the mid to upper back. And the legs can either stay out in front of you, or you can do like what I'm doing here, bringing the soles of the feet together to touch and letting the knees fall open. So there's a bit of a hip opener. I like to reach the arms up overhead and just interlace the fingers and knuckles. If this is too intense for you, you're welcome to just keep your arms by your sides. Take a few moments here to just readjust so that you can get comfortable on the wheel. I know sometimes it can feel a little bit awkward to find your balance. So take your time, and once you have found a pose that works for you, try to find a little bit of stillness and softness. Because this is a Yin Yoga practice, we're going to hold the poses for an extended amount of time, although maybe not as long as what we normally do without the wheel, just because the wheel does intensify things quite a bit. Once you get settled, close the eyes and breathe. And release the arms if you had them up overhead. You can help your knees come back in so your feet are flat to the ground. And you can tuck your chin into your chest, start to push down into your feet to lift the hips off the ground, and just rock back a little bit onto the wheel until you get the wheel more towards your mid to lower back. So like a longer supported bridge pose. Legs are extended out in front of you, and the arms can either keep reaching up overhead, or you can bring them anywhere else that would be comfortable. So we're going to go deeper into supported bridge pose. Bend the knees one at a time and use the help of your hands to roll further back onto the wheel. So you want it underneath the low back and underneath the sacrum, with the knees bent and the feet flat on the ground. Now this might be too intense. If this is too deep of a back bend, you can just go back into the previous version that we had with the legs extended out in front of you. If you're in this deeper supported bridge pose, if possible, you can always catch a hold of each ankle with your hands. Stay with your breath here. I know it's intense. We're here for about 3 minutes, but know that you can always come out of the pose earlier if you need to, and you can always go back to the pose we were doing just before this one. Relax the neck and the head. And really relax anything that does not need to be working right now. Let your hips be heavy on the wheel. And we're gonna let ourselves recover from that very, very deep back bend. Start to lift the legs off of the floor and just let your knees rest into your chest. This is almost like a plow pose, but really it should feel a bit more restorative. So almost like child's pose where you're hugging the knees in. And just take a moment or two here. We're setting ourselves up for waterfall. So waterfall, the hips are supported by the wheel and you're just letting your legs extend up towards the sky. And again, you might need to widen your arms or play around here to keep your balance. This is not meant to be a very challenging pose. We're not trying to get more flexible or anything like that. It's really just to relax the low back a little bit. So let yourself get really heavy and soften. From Waterfall, you can start to bend the knees slowly, bringing the feet back down to the floor. And we'll need to come onto hands and knees, so let yourself roll off of the wheel, support your head and neck as you do this, and then lift yourself back up to seating using your arms to help you along, and just move the prop out of the way. You're going to want to have your wheel in front of you as you come to tabletop pose. We're going to set up for a puppy stretch right here. My little cat, Cleo, is going to join us, I guess. So bring your hands onto the prop in front of you and see if you can roll it so that your elbows are connecting directly with that wheel. Hands come together, elbows bend, and you're trying to keep your hips stacked over the top of your knees. Your knees are about hip-width distance apart or so. And see if you can create a little bit of space for your forehead to rest either on your biceps or in between the arms. And we're trying to melt the heart down to the floor. So you might need to inch the wheel a little bit further away from you in order to get a deeper stretch. Just whatever feels good here. Drawing the shoulder blades down the back, lightly engaging the low belly in to support the low back. So Kapotasana, the pose that we're setting ourselves for, does require quite a bit of shoulder flexibility. And this is one of my favorite things to do to prepare for that pose. So every time you exhale, can you let your upper body get heavier and heavier, relaxing to the floor. Let's start to ease our way out of this pose. We're going to be coming into a child's pose. Big toes together, let your hips rock to your heels, reach arms back, and just relax the forehead down to the mat. Take a few deep breaths here. Notice the difference in the shoulders and in the upper back after that puppy stretch. And you can roll your way back up. We're going to get into the hip flexors and hamstrings, so doing splits pose using our wheel. This is where you will probably want to grab your blocks. It's optional, but it will be a lot easier with blocks. So the wheel goes in front of you, and you're just going to put your right ankle and calf muscle onto the wheel and slide it forward as you extend your back leg a little further. So this is like splits pose. I find it's the easiest to balance if I get the wheel a little bit more towards the shin as opposed to the ankle. So of course you'll be feeling a nice sensation into your right hamstrings, but we also want to feel a nice opening through the left hip flexors and the front of your left thigh. And just readjust however you need to here. It might take a couple tries before you get the sensation that you're looking for. And having the hands on the blocks can help you to let gravity do the work here as it pulls the hips a little bit further down. And don't worry about having perfectly straight legs. Let your right knee bend as much as it needs to. Soften your shoulders down and away from the ears. And try to be kind to your wrists here. Press down through the fingertips and knuckles. Start to roll off of that wheel nice and slow. And we'll set up for the same pose just over on the left side. So you might need to move your wheel a couple inches over to the left, so we're keeping the hips in line. And then the left foot, left calf goes over the wheel, and just slide it forward. Readjust your blocks wherever is appropriate for you here. You might need to wiggle the right leg a little further back. So getting into the right hip flexors and the left hamstrings. Draw the shoulders back so the chest is up and lifted, spine is long. Feel yourself sinking deeper and deeper into this pose. So from this splits pose, we're going to start to ease our way out. And we are going to be ready for Kapotasana, what we've been preparing for. So move your blocks out of the way, and you'll want to start off in hero pose. So sitting with your sit bones to the ground, the shins on the outsides of the thighs. You want to make sure your femur bones are parallel to each other, so aligning the knees to the hips, soles of the feet pointing up. And then you can wiggle the wheel underneath you here, so underneath the low back and mid back. And as you lay onto that wheel, you can either just keep your arms as they are, or if you wanted to go through the full variation of the pose, you can reach back and see if you can hold onto the wheel with your palms. If your flexibility is deeper than mine, you might be able to even bring your knees closer in towards you and even hold on to your ankles or your shins. But for me, this is more than enough. So you will know right away if this is not appropriate for you. If this feels like pinching in your low back, if it feels like pain in your knees, or really anywhere, just come out of the pose and you can instead simply come back into a supported fish pose or reclined hero without trying to bind the palms of the wheel. Breathe into the heart space and into the front body. We're here for about another minute or so. Okay, coming out of this pose can be a little tricky. So first, just start to let go of the wheel with your hands. And I like to bring my palms towards the shins and to push into the shins or into the heels to lift the upper body up. And then once you've lifted up, you can move the wheel out of the way and just move your props off to the side. We're going to take a little child's pose before we come down into a laying spinal twist to close our practice. Big toes together. Hips to the heels, and just relax your upper body down. See if you can let your shoulders drop over your knees and feel the effects of that deep pose on your body. Your arms can go back out in front of you, lift yourself up, and just lower down onto your back with your knees bent, feet flat on the floor, and you can reach your arms out to the shape of a T. So laying spinal twist, you can move your hips a couple inches to the right before letting your knees drop down over to the left. Either one knee stacked over the other, or if you'd like to go a little deeper like what I'm doing here, you can wrap your right thigh over the left one before letting the knees come down to the floor. If you need to modify, you can put a block underneath the thighs or in between your legs. Try to keep your right shoulder grounded to the floor. So laying spinal twist is something I always do after a back bend, and we've done quite a bit of different kinds of back bends in this class. So allow yourself to really linger here and do whatever you need so that you can be comfortable in this pose without feeling the need to fidget or move or readjust anything. Just relax and breathe deep down into your low belly and low back. And slowly lift the knees back up to center, uncross the legs, and we'll go twist to the other side. So you might need to slide your hips a little bit over to the left before letting the knees drop down over to the right. And if you wanted to intensify this, you can wrap your left thigh over the right one. Try to keep your right shoulder blade grounded as much as possible. Lift your knees back up to center, uncross the legs. And before we go into Savasana, it might feel good to just pull the knees into the belly and give it a big squeeze. And when you're ready, the legs can take up some space and the arms can go out to the sides, turning the palms to face up. Draw the shoulders down and away from the ears. Allow yourself to truly sink into the floor here. Observe how this practice has affected you, mind, body, and soul. What has changed since you first stepped onto your mat? What can you be proud of or grateful for? And let yourself rest here for just a few minutes. This is where I'll be leaving you, yogis. Thank you so much for doing this advanced Yin Yoga practice with a wheel with me. If you enjoyed this class, please support my work, supporting free yoga on the internet. You can do this just by subscribing to this YouTube channel. Many of my YouTube yoga classes are available for download as well, and it's completely donation-based. The link to that is in the description box. Thank you again. Have a wonderful day. Namaste.